Sean is so loaded up right now. He's off Twitter. He's announced that he's deleted the app. And so I cannot even imagine the amount of hot takes that are just piling up in Sean's brain. And we are ready to unleash them on the world today on the Operators Podcast. Sean, what's on your mind, brother?
Dude, I'm going to disappoint because it's actually the opposite of hot takes. I just found out that like spending a bunch of time on social media, ever since it's bad for you, like, no, it's actually probably pretty bad for you. I've gotten like 4 hours. Yeah.
It turns out they're right. They're right.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, shout out to my haters. Really amazing call from my haters. That's a meme you guys aren't going to get.
No, I love that one. And like, yeah, the haters said I couldn't do it. Turns out they were right. That was a great call by the haters. Yeah, I love that one.
What are you doing with your time, Sean? Like what's the day look like now? No X time.
I didn't think I was spending that much time on social media, but I was probably spending 3 dedicated hours.
Bro, when I looked at your feed, I was just like, what is he? Does he not have a job even? Is Connor running the company? I'm like, me finding the time to do one tweet is like an accomplishment. And you're like in the mentions, you're warring with people. Like, I'm just like, how is he doing all this? So that actually makes me feel less crazy.
Yeah, I was spending way too much time on that app. And I justify it because I like being part of the conversation and hearing stuff, and I sell wallets on there, and like, it's fun. I get to meet people. I met a lot of you guys through there. But dude, I was spending a ton of time, and really I got into a big fight about there's a short seller. I don't really want to get to rehash the details, but I think she's mentally unwell. I really wish her the best, but like she doesn't seem to understand, marketing or whatever, but like it spiraled out. And then I really had to just pop off. And like, I was like, I called people losers, and like, I'm like, you guys are so wrong. You don't understand anything. And then I was like, oh, I'm actually mad in the real world from people I've never met. And I'm like, I should not let it affect my emotions. I'm like, I just moved into this house. I'm stressed. We had forest fires earlier this year. I'm like, I got to actually I would like to be more positive, because it's a very negative time. And that's what I want to talk about with you guys today. We're coming in this with no agenda. We have a lot of friends who run a lot of different brands. And in general, most people are suffering, right? Like, and the reality, people hate when you bring this up, because like, they want to feel like they can win, or they are winning. And I think this show is very privileged sometimes, being like, yeah, we do $100 million. We're fucking crushing it. I'm hiring people. My biggest problem is, do I drive a Ferrari or a McLaren? That's not real, but like, that's how I think it could come across, like champagne problems. No, but dude, I'm super sympathetic. It's a very difficult time, and it has been for 5 years to be an e-commerce merchant. So maybe I'm too in my feels about this, but I totally get how it feels like it sucks.
It does suck. Guys, right now sucks. Like, I don't think it's like even that it feels that way. Like, we found out from our perspective, we found out, hey, you've got a 10% tariff. And like, listen, I have my own opinions about geopolitical stuff, whatever, but it's like the people on both sides of this tariff, us, our manufacturers, they're good people. And so like, then it's $8 million, and you're trying to figure out who's going to foot $8 million. And $8 million is a pretty painful freaking pill to swallow. And then I kid you, I think I may have mentioned this, the last one, I kid you not, we figured out with our manufacturer, they were in town, how we were going to do it. And it lasted less 12 hours. And then there's another 10%. And we paid 20% tariffs this week on containers. And that is $16 to $18 million real money. I mean, it doesn't matter how big your business is, you're going to feel it. And, like some of it's going to come from us and some of it's going to come from our manufacturer, but they're good people too. And so really it's just pain right now. Like there's no upside short term to the tariffs. Nobody's like, oh, but there's going to be more consumer demand. If anything, it's going to push us closer to a recession. It's just hard. Like it doesn't even matter if you're one of the few businesses that's still like kind of growing and thriving. Like, this is just hard.
Yeah. And I just like, because things change so much, like whatever tariff numbers we throw out today are going to be different in 12 hours, whatever. You're good people, Mike. Your supplier's good people. The people buying your products are good people. It's a 3-party transaction. Somebody has to pay the money.
Yeah.
You're going to absorb some of it. Your manufacturer's going to absorb some of it. The consumer's going to absorb some of it. But I don't even want to get into those details yet. I just understand that since 2019, there's been massive waves of instability in our industry. And I've gotten very lucky, 5 waves in a row, right? And I understand one of those waves takes people out. Okay. So COVID, if you were selling, not like non-essential goods or whatever, right? If you were into, dress shirts when COVID hit, you got fucked. People weren't buying dress shirts. Okay.
Luggage.
Some people got lucky, some people didn't, and it hurt a bunch of people. Then you get this like euphoric boom where everybody's buying every FBA business of all time. And if you bought one of those, you probably got so I'm sorry for you, right? If you got during that. Then you get 2022. I mean, there's freight instability in that whole thing. You're paying large container fees. If you're in the pet business or the health and wellness business after it crashes, you got like, it was really hard then. Then you have like a consumer recession at some point in 2022. You have a war in Ukraine, and I'm really sorry if you got during that. Then, I'm just listing all the stuff I can remember, okay?
Yeah.
We have interest rates going up faster than they've ever gone up in human history.
The meta change, the iOS 14 change. I mean, it's just been on and on and on. There's just so many challenges.
Jason said it last time. It's dog years. Like consumer has been dog years. The last 5 has like been 35 years of business.
Yeah. And I understand, like, look, I'm trying to be way more positive. One, people got mad. They figured out I was handsome. I'm sorry, guys. Like,
well, if you didn't do so many darn steps every day, Sean.
It's the 19,000 steps a day, dude. It just keeps you youthful.
Yeah, dude. But look, and I saw myself being way more negative on the internet, and I would just like to be more positive. I'm actually a really fun, awesome, nice guy, and I give a ton of money and support to all of my friends. But when I'm fighting with strangers on the internet, I'm like, I got to take a chill pill. So I'm getting married this month. Like, I've been married for a couple years, but we're throwing our wedding. Like, I'm just trying to bring way more peace into the world. And going back to this year, 2024 was hard for a lot of reasons, just because it was a continuation of all of the same problems. Like, freight costs didn't get better, interest rates didn't come down, consumer wasn't all that much better, and now you have like just more tariffs thrown in. So I just have a lot of sympathy. If you listen to this and you have to go bankrupt, like, I want you to know it's not the end of the world. Like, you'll get through this. If you're an agency, agencies are getting squeezed like nobody's business right now. Like, every agency is getting dropped by people because they can't, like, they're not seeing results, so they're blaming everybody around them. It's a negative spiral. And dude, my email's open. If you want to talk and you think I can help you, shoot me an email. It's not that hard to find. And I really hope you make it through. That's what I want to talk about today. Mike and Matt, you guys had any?
Well, I want to say, listen, we are very seriously with Simple Modern looking at our first EBITDA down year in a few years. I mean, I don't think top line will be down, but it's mostly because we're going to be more aggressive in marketing and deals. Like, it is a struggle right now this year for sure. And I'm just reminded, I don't know, a couple of things. One is that I read this years ago. Johnny Volk went to a conference of some pretty successful people in the private equity world, and he talked to a lot of really successful operators, and he wrote about it. And one of the things he said is it's just not always up and to the right. And I think that on this podcast especially, we tend to talk to a very, very small percentage of the larger population of operators where most of their experience has been it's up and to the right, but it is not always up and to the right for anyone. We had last week when we were talking about Shopify, they've had massive drawdowns. You think about Zuck and the journey he's been through. You think about Elon. Like, you could pretty much take anybody who's ever been an operator and say, it's just not always up and to the right. And you think, when you're really ambitious and driven, you think maybe I'm going to be the exception to that, but you're not. It comes for everybody. And I heard somebody say this, I liked it, that there's a difference between empathy and sympathy. Empathy is, I can imagine what it would be like to go through what you're going through. And so, hey, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry that's hard. But sympathy is, I feel what you are going through because I have been through it, and they're different. And I think one of the things that's positive about when you go through a challenging period is that you can actually sympathize with people. It's not just hypothetical, like abstract empathy. It's like, no, I feel it. And so like, it's hard. Running a business is hard, and it's hard when you pour your life into something and events you can't control seem to conspire against you. I use this analogy that I want to think that my life is like driving a motorboat where like I'm in control and I have agency. But every once in a while, COVID, tariffs, whatever, remind you, you're not on a motorboat. You're a river rafting guide, and the freaking river is in control. And that the best you can hope to do is steer your raft within this river that really has control of the situation. And that's what it's like to run a business. And so for everybody who's experiencing the turmoil, like first of all, I'm with you, like I'm experiencing it as well. And second of all, like I do think it makes you a stronger person and an even better operator to go through down periods. Number one, because you appreciate the up periods more. And number two, because you're just a much more enjoyable person because you really can sympathize with people when they're going through a difficult time.
All right, welcome to the Operators Podcast. We've got a great episode for you today. It is brought to you, as always, by our great sponsors, Fulfill, Northbeam, Postscript, Richpanel, and Saras. Let's get after it.
New Fulfill ad alert, everybody. We have a LinkedIn post they wanted me to read and review. So I'm going to be reading this post and giving my commentary. It's a new dimension of ads. This is like 3D ad building. So shout out Fulfill come up with this concept. Jeremy says, configuring NetSuite to Shopify was a bottom 3 project for my career. It's the definition of boomer SaaS. Yep. That's everything I've heard is that NetSuite's way too expensive and doesn't really work. What started as a 6-month project didn't get launched for 18 months. Took dev teams, 3PLs. I don't know what a SL is, but yeah, I've just heard horrible things that like you get sold this like beautiful, shiny package and it ends up being hell. Like you're signing up for like, worse than a root canal. Getting inventory to sync properly with 3PL to Shopify. It's the one reason he doesn't have hair anymore. Hilarious. Adding EDI was painful. Yeah, dude, e-commerce is built on all of these horrible softwares that just that you hope work together. EDI for legacy retailers. You have like a order management system. You have a WMS. You have all that type of stuff. Fulfill just does all that for us. So it's one bill I have to pay. They connect to my 3PL. They make sure all that stuff works and the data just flows. So at the end of the day, we had all the data. In NetSuite, accounting was easier. I had mostly correct inventory access, but there was times where it broke and then they got oversold. And then he had to manually override the inventory. That's just a very old school legacy system. It's kind of like building your website on Demandware or whatever legacy system was before Shopify. So yeah, that's the old school way to do it. There's new ways to do it. And the new ways are Fulfill. But yeah, man, look, it's modern software for the modern era, right? NetSuite was a legacy standard in 1999. And I was 5 years old. Don't you think you should have software that's built at least in the past 10 years? That's what Fulfill is. So I use it. Jason uses it. If it's good enough for Jason, it's good enough for me. If it's good enough for me, hopefully it's good enough for you. Appreciate Fulfill being here the whole time. Flagship sponsor for a reason. I literally give them $100,000 a year. So it is what it is. I love them. They're the best ERP that money can buy. Because they're better than NetSuite. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for listening. Let's start the show.
So running an e-commerce business at scale isn't just about great products and marketing. It's about precision. And when you're operating at a high level, 99.9% accuracy stops being nice to have and becomes non-negotiable. That's why I'm excited to talk about our experience working with Saras Analytics. They've given us real visibility into the numbers that matter. Things like product level COGS, supply chain costs, inventory optimization, all of our marketing metrics. That's just the start. We're estimating 2 to 5% efficiency boost across the board, improving customer retention, making our marketing dollars work harder, and ensuring we're operating smarter as we're getting bigger. These aren't just minor wins. They compound over time to make a huge difference in profitability. But what I really love, the cultural shift this brings. When teams have clarity on the data, collaboration improves. Finance, marketing, and operations aren't just working in silos anymore. They're making decisions together with the same source of truth. It's not just about insights. It's about execution. I talk about this all the time, execution. So if you're scaling your e-com brand and need that kind of accuracy and efficiency, you need to talk to Saras Analytics. It's been a game changer for us.
So I got on a call. I'll give you some context. I got a call earlier this week, Sean, similar to you. It's like, I just talked to a lot of brands and a lot of operators. And the guy, first thing the guy says to me when I get on the call, he's like, man, how you doing? Looking at me, and I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm great. He's like, the Canada tariff thing, like, you must be just freaking out. And I'm like, at some point, man, like, you've been in the game long enough. Like, I almost feel a little desensitized to the up and down now. Do you guys get that? Like, you both have been at this a long time, right? So like, every time some macro, some rule in the field is changed and it's out of my control, I have a weirdly unemotional and like level reaction to it. And I don't know if that's just like time in the oven, time in the game. Like, I've just been baking so long, I'm just an old dude now. Or is it something else? But like, I kind of, and this is sort of my advice to operators, is like, you should get used to it. Because like, there's so much crap out of your control, like so much. And consumer, we joke about this in consumer, but like, and I know we've talked about this in the pod, like, to be good in consumer, you need to be great at a lot of things. It's not just one thing. There's so much that we have to be good at, which then means that the surface area for to go wrong is very large, right? And even at both like internal things you control and macro, like what you do not control. And we're seeing this right now. It's like, I swear, every morning I get up, my wife looks at me with some version of a like worried face because she saw the news. She's like, how you doing? And I'm like, honey, I'm good. Like, I'm not even turning it on because whatever is said today is going to change tomorrow. It's totally cool. Like, we'll figure it out. Do you, either of you, like, how much does it affect you on a day-to-day basis? Like, Sean, right now, like, where are you at? How does that actually, like, how does it show up?
Well, dude, yeah, it sounds like you're a student of stoicism. Anyone who knows me knows that I am not that way. I am not. I'm not even keeled. I'm emotion on my sleeve type guy. So when things are good, I'm very happy and jubilant. When things are bad, I am in despair. So look, I wish I could. Part of the reason I'm also taking time away from the internet. I turned 31. So in the same month, I'm turning 31. I get into this big fight. I'm wasting all my time on the internet, and I have a wedding. And you just, in a wedding, you start inviting people that like be friends of mine that I haven't seen in earnest in 5 years. Right.
Wow.
And it's like, you let COVID get in the way, and then COVID turns into literally half a decade ago. You could have graduated college when this happened. Right. And you just start thinking, my brother said this to me. He's like, your life's a play, and you don't know when a character leaves, and you don't know when their lines are over, right? So people are always coming in and out, and it's like, oh my, you start having all of these just like premonitions of dying and whatever. And I'm like, oh, and what am I going to be known as? Like the guy who accused Sass of killing people. I'm like, oh my God, I got to get off the fucking internet. And long story short, Matt, I'm trying to bring more stoicism in everything I do. I'm incredibly blessed that I was poor and now I'm not poor. I have sympathy for people who are currently going through things I've had to go through. But I mean, my emotions are day by day that's measured by Facebook ROAS. So I wish it wasn't, but I don't know how to get out of that.
Yeah, that part is true. It's more, and Mike, maybe you can speak to this, but like, because I posted this in our chat. It's like, how do you lead a team and a company when like everything, like when volatility is high? Right? Like
I think that is what leadership is.
How do you do it?
Well, one of the stories I'll tell people is investing in individual stocks shaped me in a really unique way, I think. And that is that I have been through days where I have made and lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in a single day. And that experience wreaks havoc on your emotions, as you can imagine, but it also helps you to develop real intestinal fortitude. And I was talking to somebody this week and saying, at this point, I think a really non-trivial amount of my success probably comes from the fact that I'm just able to compartmentalize and to process through stress and uncertainty at a level that most people can't. Because leadership is when the ship is taking on water and everybody is screaming and you're screaming internally, to be able to calm everybody down, and say, we're going to be okay. You go do that. You go do that. You bail out water. And it's really scary when you know that your job is to communicate calm when you don't feel very calm. But I do think it's it's a skill that you can develop. And it is one of the hard things about leadership is that you lose the ability to show people everything that you're feeling, because I think we want to tell people what we're feeling and we want to express it with other people and we want to hear their feedback on it. But you really don't get that privilege. I mean, the last time that I really remember it was during COVID. We at the beginning of COVID, before COVID even happened, like, I'm aware COVID is a thing. We've been told about about it by our manufacturer, and I started telling people in probably February, like, hey, we're probably going to have some work from home. So ironically, the way that COVID kind of got set off in the US is there was an Oklahoma City Thunder game that they canceled it at tip off because Rudy Gobert tested positive for COVID. And and then Tom Hanks announced he has COVID. And then all of a sudden there's work from home orders and 30 days to stop the spread. And it all kind of, very quickly. Well, we were on a Zoom within 24 hours of that with the entire team because we were prepared. And I'm like, guys, it's going to be disruptive. We're going to be fine. I'm doing a great job of communicating exactly what you're talking about, Matt. Calm. And I felt calm. I felt calm right up until the point where there was a week where Target came to us and they said, we literally cannot order anything from you because it's all essential items. And then the very next day, Amazon made an algorithm change because they were so overwhelmed, where 75% of their catalog went to 1 month delivery and they kept 1 day delivery on everything else. And so we saw sales rates on some items go to the moon, where we were going to be out in 2 weeks, and a whole bunch of other stuff just dropped off an absolute cliff. We had no agency in it. And I remember laying in bed that night and thinking, are we going to be okay? I don't know. But it's still the leader's job to be able to give other people confidence. And it's like this really weird balance of, you don't lie to people and you don't pretend things that are hard aren't hard. But at the same time, you give them a plan, you give them direction, you project confidence, even if you don't feel it yourself sometimes. And so, yeah, I think that this is just the latest in that, it's like, hey, the tariffs suck. We will find a solution. We will find a way through this. I believe we will get through the other side of this, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it to you. 18 million's in it. Like, I'll give a really vulnerable example here. We are very generous with our people in terms of how we do compensation. I stood up in front of the entire company on Tuesday and said, basically, nobody's getting a raise this year because we just took on $18 million in additional cost. And that I think as your leader, what you want from me more than anything is you want stability and you want to know that you're going to have a job in 2 or 3 years. And so I'm going to be very protective of capital right now. And that's not fun to do, right? But it's like, you just kind of have to. The situation demands it.
Yeah. I mean, Mike, that's actually a really smart thing. We just did reviews in February, and instead of doing raises the next day, I moved them to start April 1st. Because the same thing, I'm like, I don't know what tariff,
yeah.
We're pretty shielded from tariffs for a lot of different reasons, but I did have to import a bunch of stuff and it cost me like $700,000. And I'm like, yeah, like
yeah, your rates are crazy. You've got a low cost basis, but you were posting some of your percentage rates and they're nuts, Sean.
Yeah. I mean,
well, I think the problem is that it's the uncertainty. That's if we knew with certainty that, like, here are how tariffs are going to roll out and over what period of time and the amounts.
Yeah.
I think that's a very different, like, most of us in the space can operate when we know, like, okay, for certain, here is what I am dealing with. Right now, I think the difficulty for a lot of people is it's the uncertainty, it's the lack of clarity, it's the seesaw, where, like, this is why you have to make decisions like that. It's like, I just don't know, right?
We're all being reacquainted with the Trump experience, and it's just a proof that you can directionally be right on things and still be wrong in how you execute them. Like, listen, the number one thing that'll freeze up investment, I mean, Sean and I just literally gave this example, is uncertainty. If I don't know what the environment's going to be 2 months from now or 6 months from now, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hold on to my capital. And this isn't just true of us. This is true of households. If I don't know if I'll have my job in 4 months, I'm not going to buy the new car. I'm not going to replace the dishwasher. And if the country starts to feel like we don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks or 2 months, then they will be defensive and they will hold on to their capital and the whole thing seizes up. And that's how you get not just a recession, but a major recession. And the administration is absolutely playing with fire right now, because if you create enough uncertainty where people say, oh, I'm just going to kind of sit here and wait it out, then the economy can go south in a hurry. You have to, it's tariffs, and whether or not you think we should be doing them is a long conversation, but how you execute on them, if you're going to do them, has to look different than this. I think you shared, Molson had a tweet about this today, and he made the exact same point. It's not even about the tariffs. It's about, like, to use an office reference, snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap. It's like nobody knows what's going to happen. And as a result, it's just like the day that Trump announced the second 10% tariff, the stock market basically didn't move. And I'm like, are they hearing the same news I am? And like, you know what I think functionally the stock market was doing that day is they were like, BS, you're not going to actually do it. And then more recently, it's like, no, he actually was going to do it this time. And you've seen equities take a absolute nosedive and crypto and everything else. I mean, the crypto thing's another good example. We're going to create a strategic reserve, but you don't explain how. And so crypto rallies like crazy. And then David Sachs comes out and says, well, actually, what we mean by that is all the crypto that we already own through, seizures, that's going to go in the strategic reserve, and then crypto tanks. And there's a whole bunch of this in a bunch of different dimensions going on right now. Tariffs are just one of them.
The move fast and break things includes break things. It's not just move fast, there's a two-parter there that I think a lot of people think move fast sounds awesome. Let's go do that. It's like, but you're forgetting the break things part, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the small text, but it's really important.
And this is the most recent thing. That's like going back to, like, look, we're a show for entrepreneurship, right? We're a show about e-commerce, really, like selling shit on the internet with your friends. And it's like, why has the show been popular? Why have we been successful, right? Like in 2019, Rich was like we maybe did $20 million a year. Like maybe it was 30 that year. I don't remember, but it was like we were bumbling around trying to figure our shit out. And then, really, because of all this uncertainty, because of this global shift in buying behavior and everything else, I now am in charge of hundreds of people's livelihoods. Okay. Like, it's been a very, very rapid, weird change. And we've taken advantage of that for sure. It's been awesome for us. We've built a great business, and I'm rich now because of it. But the flip side is, like, there's been a lot of pain and distortion, and I'm just hyper aware that there have been a lot of losers, and there will continue to be. What's up, guys? Sean from Ridge here. I'm here to talk about the value an MTA solution can provide to brands. So we've been on Northbeam since day one. We were the first customer. We were there when they were building the platform, and they built it for the needs of a high growth meta dependent brand. Okay. That's what Ridge was back then in 2017. It's what Ridge is now. And they've been building a tool for meta dependent brands the entire time. So what are they trying to solve? What is the problem here? Well, first party data is more and more critical. End-to-end first party analytics and multi-touch attribution is the only way to guarantee the right spend allocation. Now, ad platforms max out at 30 days of attribution. Now, that works for some brands, but most brands it doesn't. The power to understand a customer journey, no matter how long it started, has a huge impact, especially for higher AOV products. As we get into luggage, as we get into rings, we just need to understand what's making these customers come and make a purchase with us. Using a tool like Northbeam, an MTA tool, diminishes the overcrediting of things like retargeting and branded search. We all want to know where that customer actually learned about us and where it started. So here's just some data from Northbeam. Northbeam customers do better, period. They've measured over $3.8 billion in spend and $26 billion in revenue. Okay. Now, they measure brands pre and post launch, and post launching on Northbeam, they see a 5.5% revenue improvement. They see 7% increase in new customer transactions. They see a 3.5% increase in media efficiency ratio, MER, and they see a 5% decrease in customer acquisition costs. So this is the data from $4 billion in spend, $26 billion in revenue. Revenue's going up. MER is going up, new customers are going up, CACs are going down. You're acquiring more customers, doing more revenue, more efficiently post using Northbeam. So that's data in aggregate. Take it for what it's worth. But we've been using Northbeam the entire time, and I'm about to have my best year ever. Directionally, thank you, Northbeam, for everything you do. Appreciate you. Thank you for sponsoring the podcast. If you want to spend more money and do it more efficiently, hit up Northbeam. Tell them I sent you. Thank you so much.
You know, Sean, though, we're talking about the uncertainty, volatility part right now, but what you're raising is also a good part, is a really good thing to point out, which is the second way to view this is like never waste a crisis, right? So like, and the thing I've been telling my team is, look, if we're going to feel pain, what makes me excited is that at our size, the amount of pain we're going to feel, I think we can tolerate. Now, some of our competitors who are 10 and 50 times larger than us, that's going to be an amount of pain that I don't know that they can tolerate.
Well,
and they can't move as fast as
company
us.
structure matters quite a bit. And
it does.
I communicate something really similar to our team that I think if you think about it like this, the more tumultuous the environment, the more that favors the stronger operators. Like when things are kind of status quo and calm, I think that actually favors incumbents. I think when things get water gets super choppy,
agility matters.
Yeah, and just because there's more decisions to be made, right? Yep. Like when everything is status quo, there's not a lot of strategic positioning or shifting. But when things get super, like as just a very tangible example here, everyone has to relook at their pricing model. Everyone does. And because the cost model is changing. And so with that, it's a huge market repositioning and all of consumer. And some people are going to make wise choices and some people aren't. And we'll see. We'll see who the winners and losers are. But another example of this is some companies, because it's a difficult period, are going to pull back on investment. This is really typical. You cut your R&D, you cut your marketing budget, you cut the things that fund the future. And the companies that don't cut back on those things may be making hay right now because, CPMs get cheaper or whatever. So, or that your competitors aren't developing the next product when you are. And so I do think you're going to see, this is one place where I think public companies, I think it really works against you to be a public company.
Yeah. Mike, a lot of people are going to be eating their seeds, right? And like,
that's right.
It's a difficult time. I want to bring up two real world examples. I talked to JP Morgan yesterday, and they're trying to convince me to go to market to sell my business. They're like, "You're profitable, you're growing. They're like, you're a unicorn. It'd be a great time to go out there." And then I'm like, guys, Solo Stove is worth $50 million in the public market. And then the guy goes, yeah, and Allbirds has negative enterprise value. Allbirds trades for less than the cash on their balance sheet.
Wow.
And it's like, that means you could buy the company, shut it down, distribute cash to shareholders, and turn a profit. Like that happens in biotech sometimes, but for a physical retailer, that's very, very weird. Okay. That's just like shows like how hard consumer is right now and how people really don't know what the future looks like. The second example is there's a company called Peak Design. Contemporaries in the space. Okay. Like we have friends that work there. People have come to work with us. I think they make really great products. Don't even see them as a direct competitor. They did a Kickstarter right now and it's crushing. It raised $5 million. It's for a carry-on. I am so worried for them. And I haven't talked to them about this. This is my first public statement on it. Their carry-on, they're trying to sell it for it's like $525. Like it's going to be a $600 carry-on, right? Really, really expensive, really high end of the market. They're not made yet. And I'm like, dude, I don't know where you're making it, but there could be 90% tariffs, God forbid, when it comes to make the thing and ship to customers. And you've already pre-ordered a very expensive carry-on at the top of the market. So like, that's the uncertainty. And like, dude, I don't know if they would do that in this current environment. That's
and to build on that, Sean, this is one of the things that we've been internally chatting about, but this is a good place to bring it up. It came out this week that the top 10% of earners, or maybe it was last week, top 10% are more than what, 50%?
50% of all consumer spending.
All consumer spending. And so like, just ask yourself one question. Where is the top 10% primarily getting that money that they're spending on consumer discretionary items.
Well, the flip side of that, Mike, is it's mostly coming from asset appreciation.
That's my whole point. My whole point is that most of that juice is coming from last year. The market was up, whatever, 18% or whatever it was, that crypto's been on a huge tear. And so if that's your worldview, is that the thing that's really the pillar that's really supporting all this is a small group of people, the top 10%. I mean, that's certainly who's buying a $500 carry-on. What happens if the stock market turns? What happens if crypto goes south? And we know that crypto can go south big time in a hurry. And it's like, well, you don't have to be very imaginative to answer that question. And that's the thing that's really scary right now, is it's not just that there's all this uncertainty in the tariffs and stuff. It's like there may be another fairly big shoe to drop. And if that top 10% pulls back, then you're talking major drawdowns in the amount of money going to consumer.
Yep.
Look, and the economy's been weird post-COVID. Like you go to, airlines, first class seats are sold out. You go to, music festivals and they're fucking packed. And so it's like, there's always been these pockets of like recession working through. And I mean, the best example is the technology economy. Like, my brothers are a developer. We have another developer, and he's like, hey man, thanks for not firing me. He's like, there's no jobs right now for developers. Like there's literally zero, like they're not hiring anybody. So there's been these pockets of recession working its way through. And Mike, I think what you're saying is like, the pocket could continue working its way through, right? Like,
yeah, we haven't even talked about that's colliding with the AI thing. Like I've been doing a lot of speaking at I'm really involved at OU. And so I've been speaking to a lot of different kind of groups of people. But like, here's an interesting hypothetical to just think about. If you're trying to advise a college student and they're like, I'm trying to figure out what my career looks like in 10 or 15 years. How do I prepare? What's the skill set I need? I have no clue. I mean, nobody has any clue how to answer that question. 5 years ago, when all the journalists were losing their job, it was like, learn to code, bro. Well, how's that working out? Let's say you took the advice and you did learn to code. Well, you just walked right into another market that's dying. And so I think that we've got this other layer of uncertainty, which is the ground is moving very rapidly under our feet on the technology side. And so we know that 5 years from now looks really different than today. We know it. We just don't know exactly how it looks different. And so that's another layer that's causing, like, we go back to the hiring thing. Like, I'm not hiring people right now because I don't want to come to somebody in 2 years and say, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have given you a job. AI can do what I hired you to do. We were looking at getting a product insights manager, somebody to just do market research. And then we started using a tool that a bunch of the Fortune 500 guys are using. That's an AI-based tool. And it's amazing. Basically, you pay per interview. You can give it a whole bunch of criteria, all the things you want to learn about. It goes out there and it finds people that meet all of your demographic criteria. And then it conducts a video interview with them where the questions are dynamic based on how they're responding. It interviews them and it uploads it all into like a GPT kind of format. What you get at the end is it's maybe gone and conducted 300, 500 interviews. And you can get on there just like ChatGPT and say, hey, what did women 25 to 45 think about this particular feature? And it'll be like, okay, boom, here's 4 paragraphs of response. And then here are 8 video clips of women talking about that exact thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, like I thought I needed a customer insights manager, but this is way better than anything that they would be able to do. And so that's the other piece that's kind of causing investment to be slow. Like when the technology is rapidly advancing and subsequently today's technology is depreciating rapidly, it's really hard to motivate yourself to go out and make big investments, whether that's in people or in technology, because you're just like, well, maybe I wait till next month and I get something twice as powerful.
There's an element of this that is really just about consumer discretionary, right? That like we're talking about. Because I think I'm trying to unpack like big themes and everything that's changing and all the data that we're seeing from the top 10% earners to the where are they getting their money to all the tariff yin yang. It does seem to be a bit of an attack on discretionary, right? Like that kind of spending. And outside of these like anomaly places that people spend money, like I don't understand who's buying flights and paying for some of these hotel rates right now. Cause like I go to places and I'm like, who, why are there so many people here? Like, is there this many rich people in the world that like these flights and these hotels are packed everywhere? Or is this just commanding such an incredible part of share of wallet for everyone? And that, no matter what, like those of us that are in consumer discretionary, like we might be in for a bit of a, period of hurt. That
Well, what's crazy is that consumer discretionary is not as big as you would think, or at least like here's a crazy number. How much money do you think China exports in goods? China exports to the U.S. every year.
Isn't it like 14 or 15% of their exports is in consumer is like to the U.S.?
It's like $300 billion.
Yeah,
like
I've seen numbers between 300 and 600 billion, but like let's just take the high end. Let's say it's 600 billion. Think about this. Like basically what amounts to a $12 billion $120 billion tax, if you put 20% tariffs on 600 billion, could almost entirely tank the Chinese economy. Like,
right.
If you talk about like the size of these economies, it's kind of a wild idea but it's also subsequently true that these tariffs could have a really disproportionate impact to the size of economies that they're impacting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Well, I think, Mike, there's a very famous chart that I'm not going to be able to find because I don't go on Twitter anymore, but it's percentage of import or export of an economy, right? And they're like people are trying to rationalize why the fuck is Trump doing all these tariffs like on Mexico and Canada and China and everything else. It's because like import and export US economy, it's like sub 20% put together, right? Most of our economy is weird random bullshit that we do with each other, buying restaurants or fucking there's a vet at my house right now that has nothing to do with tariffs at all. I paid a vet to come over and look at my dog because he's like deaf and blind and 12, right? He's not going anywhere. And yeah, so like where it's like 40% of the Chinese economy, it's just massive fucking percentage is importing and exporting.
If you send SMS messages, I don't actually know why you're not using Postscript. My view is simple. I just don't think you should be gambling with SMS. Every single message that you sent out should be the best message that you can send out. It's a high ROI channel. So you should take the best shot you can possibly take. There's a reason why we're all with Postscript. They help us take the best quality shots. I have used 4 different SMS platforms over the years, and it feels like I'm just not gambling with Postscript. They are always leading edge in the latest features. They're even going to be early on this AI stuff. I honestly don't have a good reason why you shouldn't at least consider them for your SMS marketing. Like Postscript is just a great platform. Take a look.
Do you, I guess, where do you guys look for optimism right now? So like lots of uncertainty, lots of volatility. I'm even seeing this on X. Like I still log in. I don't post much, but like I'm watching what people are talking about, and people are starting to clue in that like a lot of what brands are feeling is out of their control. It has to do with like what Mike is hitting on. This is consumers are kind of hoarding cash, and they are also uncertain, right? Like think of how many government workers are like, are we employed still right now? Like that's a question for a lot of people in the US at the moment. So like, where is the optimism here? Like you guys are seasoned operators. What do you, I can tell you what I'm thinking about, but like, I'm curious, where are you guys thinking?
You're me, Sean.
Okay. I'm in California, and the governor has just said all state employees have to come back in office 4 days a week. Okay. There's an RTO mandate. And then I saw on Reddit that they're like, there's a one for California state workers, and they're like, how do we stop this? Like, do we protest? Do we do whatever? And I just think we're dealing with this COVID's always been have and have nots, right? Like, oh, I get to work from home, but you have to go risk dying, right? And like, I'm going to order, food delivery, and you're going to fucking get food stamps. Like that's been so much of this COVID experience. And as lower end consumers continue to get squeezed with inflation, with tariffs or whatever, I think there's to be very little sympathy for people being like, you're complaining about going to the office 4 days a week. I'm like, I've been working 7 days a week to pay for all this shit. So, what I'm trying to say is I just try to, because you asked where's the optimism, and I immediately told you something hella negative, is that people I think are going to continue to keep fighting. Something has to come to a head, right? Like like there is going to be some sort of bypass. Like the US economy globally is the strongest. It is the most diversified. We can absorb any sort of hit that it's going to take. And maybe I lose a bunch of money and maybe a lot of my friends go out of business, but like we're all smart, capable people. We'll power through. We'll find things to do. I own a house now. When I moved to LA 10 years ago, less than 3 miles away, I lived in a flop house. Okay. I'm like, I'm not going back there. So like I have made meaningful improvements in my life. Right. So yeah, look, the optimism, it's going to be okay. We're very robust. We're very strong. We're going to power through. And I do think at some point you got to take the medicine. We have not taken the medicine as a country for 30 fucking years at this point. We've never balanced the budget. We continue to fucking get more debt. We continue to try to tax and inflate and blah, 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 blah. So it's like, it's super fucking painful. It has to happen at some point. I also wish there was clarity. I wish we had a plan that we stuck to and we messaged it. That'd be awesome. But anyway, Mike, how are you staying positive?
So I think the most optimistic thing is to just zoom out from the economy and everything and just, in the last week, they published a study that they may have, they're on the trail of destroying pancreatic cancer. Like maybe they're not there yet, but they're honing in. Like you can feel it's kind of like a heat-seeking missile that, you know, is kind of just about to go into lock. Like I read another thing where if you have an autosome disorder that causes deafness, they figured a thing they can inject where you just regain your hearing. The first generation of the GLP drugs that it's kind of like, is this a free lunch? This is crazy. These things actually can do all of this stuff. Oh yeah, but there's some side effects and muscle loss. Well, guess what? Generation 2 of the GLPs is coming, and it's just like, what if we made the fat loss even better and there were no side effects? And, you know, whatever. It's like, it's all the things, right? And you can take low doses. We're clearly on this exponential technology curve. And not only are we on this exponential curve, but we are figuring out ways to turn that into less human suffering. And that is the massive bull case of right now of like, don't miss the forest for the trees. The forest is, over the next 5 or 10 years, we will destroy some of the biggest scourges that humanity has ever known. If you have gone through seeing somebody have Alzheimer's, I guarantee you we will find a way in the next 5, 10, 15 years that's going to be out of here.
Yeah.
You know, if you've experienced Parkinson's, if you've lost someone to cancer, like we are going to take those things out. And probably there are going to be things even greater than that, things that we don't even really dare to like hope could be possible that are coming. And so like, that's the rosy part of this. The hard part is it is really difficult for me to state to people how disruptive I think it will be as those things come to pass. Like just as like a thought exercise. So the CEO of Anthropic, who they're responsible for the Claude model, which is fantastic. It made news over the last week. They dropped a new model, which is apparently just exceptional at coding and helping.
It's crazy.
Which that's, by the way, another data point. Literally every week, there's like, oh, this is the new, Grok 3 dropped like what, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And that was like just, the mind-blowingly good. And from what I have read and heard, like what's in the pipeline, like ChatGPT 5 and what's in the pipeline is going to be the next generation, which is just, whatever, a huge step up. But anyway, the CEO of Anthropic wrote a very long and detailed post. We can put it in the show notes. I kind of think sometimes that we don't actually have show notes. I've never actually seen them or looked at them, but we reference them. They're like this imaginary place, that's like kind of when you tell your kids.
We keep saying show notes and there is none.
Our show notes are like when you tell your kids that the dog went to live on the farm. But if we had show notes, we would post this blog post that the CEO of Anthropic had where he lays out like what he thinks will happen over the next 10 years with AI. And I would say out of everybody in the world who's probably positioned to have some educated point of view, he's probably on a very short list at the top. And he has a really deep medical background. His number one prediction was that we get 100 years of medical progress, somewhere between 100 and 1,000 years worth of medical progress in the next 10 years.
Oh.
It was his number one prediction. And it is not hand wavy. He goes into exactly how you get there. But like, just think about that for a second, guys. 100 years ago, we didn't have penicillin. We didn't know about germs really 100 years ago. They didn't wash their hands when they delivered babies. It's just crazy if you think if that was true, like if we were really about to get 100 years at today's rate of progress, if we got that in the next 10 years. So I think, Sean, you wrote a tweet, one of my favorite tweets that you ever wrote. And I think the tone that you should take is like, if you woke up today, this is the best day in the history of the world. And tomorrow, that'll be the new best day. And I think that that's what's overall true. And that our job in whatever walk of life you're in is to help keeping ensuring that that is true. But it's also a crazy disruptive time right now.
You know, part of what, just listening to both of you, like that, what comes to mind for me and just from a consumer lens is through all this disruption, I sort of think that the power of physical things is actually going to rise. Like that, the importance of physical things. Like I have this belief, and I could be completely wrong, but I do think that the things that we buy are a really important part of our identity, like each of us. And it's actually like there's a societal element to this too. Like it actually, they very much shape culture, like things. And I think that one of my working theories right now is that through all of this disruption, that you're going to see more and more people go back to like the craft of making things. You know, and you see it, I've seen it in so many of my friends, even like super small sample size, but like they get to an exit, they sell their company, they're stupid rich now, and they take up fucking woodworking or like some other thing, you know, like I know somebody right now, she's like really into like cut and sew. And she's like, I think I might just start making really high-end clothing. I'm like, super cool. Like she's worth $100 million. Like that's amazing. So I look at this from a consumer, like I think maybe consumer does shrink. Maybe this attack on discretionary spending means that like discretionary spending goes down. Or it like Scott Bessent the other day was like, I don't know if you saw this, Mike, but basically said like the American dream is nothing to do with, the consumption of cheap stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's not actually what we're here for. You know, it's about upward
mobility.
You're
You're gonna get me
all
on
that stuff.
that.
So like
that's the biggest.
I love that.
That's the biggest argument for optimism is like, listen, guys, we're the richest people in the history of the world by orders of magnitude. And you know what? Life expectancy went down last year in the country. And you know why? Because of so many freaking overdoses. The idea that just because we have a bigger economy or there's more money or we have more knickknacks that we're going to be happier. We know it's not true. We know it's not true. Like there's study after study and evidence point after evidence point. And so like, hey, we might go through a really crappy recession and it might suck. It also might cause us to spend more time with our family. It might also cause us to recenter on the things that matter the most. And so like, I don't, that's one of the reasons, one of the ways that I keep my sanity in business is I'm like, I kind of view it as like, listen, the business is here until it's not. The money's here until it's not. And I'm going to do the best job I can. But I know what it's like to make $17,000 a year. And I was really happy. And if I had to go back to that, I could be happy there. There's a great quote. It's a Rockefeller quote that, somebody asked him like, when's it going to be enough? And he says just a little bit more. And I think it's interesting when I've referenced this before, but when they ask really wealthy people, like, how much more would you need to earn in order to feel comfortable or to feel secure? Regardless of how much net worth they have, they almost always say like 15 to 30% more. It's like you end up kind of saying the same thing. And I'll tell you a little secret for anybody listening to this, and take it for what it's worth. Do with it what you will. But the way that you get happy is that your answer to that question is that I could be happy with a heck of a lot less. And that's kind of like what keeps me sane is like, I feel like I could be happy with a heck of a lot less. I'm not under this illusion that I need a little bit more. So it's like, I want the business to grow. I want to be successful. But if my company's down 20% next year, like that doesn't mean I'm a failure as a person. And that doesn't mean that that it harms the things in my life that really matter. This is like where like the touch grass thing I think really matters. It's like the things in my life that really matter, like my wife, my kids, my friendships, with people like you guys, like that stuff's not going anywhere. Doesn't matter what Trump does. Tariffs can't touch that stuff.
Yeah. Is your customer service team drowning in support tickets? That was us before switching to Richpanel. What if your team could focus on conversations that truly needed a human touch? Well, Richpanel is an AI-first help desk built for e-commerce. We've been with them for a while, and we've accomplished 3 things already. 1, we've immediately cut our customer service costs by 50%. That's more features, better support, and instant impact on our top and bottom line. Boom, savings. Next is our self-service platform and AI automations, which have reduced tickets by 47%. So we're on track to save $500,000 in support costs this year alone. Boom, savings. The automations didn't compromise customer satisfaction. In fact, we're at an all-time high with a 92% customer satisfaction score. Our customers are happier, our agents are happier, and I'm happier because of the savings. I'm on track to save over $500,000 in CX hiring costs thanks to their AI. Now I can tell Connor to take that money and put it right into Meta. Join the 2,000 7, 8, and 9-figure brands that have switched to Richpanel. Save money, save time, and improve the quality of your customer support. The Richpanel team's amazing. They're going to be on Slack with you. They're there to help build custom features to make your life easier. If you want to slash your customer support expenses by 30% and reduce tickets by 30%, go to richpanel.com/demo. richpanel.com/demo. Demo. For the final time, it's richpanel.com/demo. Tell them the operator sent you. Tell them you've never heard of Cody or Jones Road Beauty, that they did not send you. It was the operators. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Well, I got a lot of responses as someone who's been touching a lot of grass.
So say, Sean, how does it feel?
Yeah, man. Okay, so Matt brought up this idea that it could be really good for like the physical world and physical spaces, and the things you buy are really important. And there's this idea in anthropology is that like you can't say it's a part of human nature if you can find one example of it not being part of human nature. And so there's this idea that like, it's like, okay, well, do all humans kiss, or is it just 99% of all humans? We found one culture that doesn't, so it's not actually a part of human nature, right?
Yeah.
And there's a big debate about clothes, right? It's like, okay, are clothes a learned behavior, or did we just always wear clothes as humans? And there's tribes that are totally naked, but they still mark their body up, right? And because there's this human desire for branding, for fashion, for
individuality.
Yep. Yeah. And so like that actually is a part of human nature. So it doesn't surprise me that that's always going to be a part of what we do. And this next idea about AI, we're in a very inflationary environment. Well, AI will be very deflationary. And a 20% tariff, technology is about 20% of the economy. The software is about 20% of the economy. If that goes to zero and we have a 20% tariff on physical goods, we're about break even. And I'm not saying all technology is going to zero, but like more and more, like, if you start removing developer costs and everything fucking else, it's like, okay, software is really, AI is going to eat software, and software ate the earth, right?
And Sean, just to add an idea on top of that I think doesn't get captured in the numbers, the way that we measure GDP is we only measure what people pay things for. And so we dramatically underestimate the way that technology adds value to our lives, because I don't pay to use Facebook. The monetization model doesn't involve me giving out dollars. And so if I don't pay to use Wikipedia, and so basically there's been this massive expansion in kind of quality of living and standard of living that's not really captured by GDP growth, because it's happened via technology and information availability.
Yeah, totally. And this is my last point. So, I mentioned it's my birthday. I'm getting married. I don't go to the doctor. I famously once a year go just get an MRI. I'm just like, tell me if I'm dying or not. Tell me if I have cancer. And so you pay for an MRI, and like, they try to make it really nice. They put on Netflix, and they put on it was just a show about animals.
It's a great experience. Totally.
Yeah. So there was a show about animals playing, and it was it was about these butterflies, and some of them are poisonous, okay, but then there's another species that just has evolved to look poisonous. It just mimics the poisonous one, okay. And if you think about evolution, that happened randomly over 10 million years or whatever. The ones that didn't look like that one like got eaten, and it was slow and slow and slow, and then it ended up happening. How does something mimic that? And that's evolution. Technology, we're the only creature smart enough to be like, oh shit, if I look like that thing, I don't get eaten. I'm going to do that in one lifetime. I'll figure that out right now. So technology is just, it's just speed running evolution in that regard. And Mike, I am such a techno optimist. People don't understand how long history is and how much it sucked. Like, Mike brought up that we didn't know what germs were. Literally in like 1925, someone figured it out. People were flying planes and had no concept of germs. Literally never thought about it. Right? They just thought people got sick because they were bad. And yeah. So anyway, all I'm trying to say is that
there are so many stats from the past that when you hear them, you're like, can't be true. Just utterly ridiculous. Like one of the ones that I heard is in London in the mid 1800s, up to 30% of women were prostitutes. And you just like think about society over the years and the whole like things are getting worse crowd. If you tell me that things are getting worse, what you're really telling me is that you have no understanding of history. Like they literally used to, like in Rome, they'd be like, hey, the people are bored. The people are hungry. Let's get some lions and let's throw a bunch of people in there with them and let people watch the lions eat them. You know, like things are a lot better than they've ever been.
Do you guys know the site Wait But Why by Tim Urban?
He is fantastic. Strong recommend.
Yeah. So I think this is probably like 6 or 7 years ago. I was at an event in Ojai, California, and he was there. He was attending, and he kind of got up on stage and he started telling this story. And I don't know if you've seen this, but like it was the most hilarious and eye-opening thing for me on this subject. Okay. And like the punchline is this. It's like, imagine aliens showed up to Earth and you handed them a 500-page book on human history. The first 498 pages, it is just blank darkness. And on page 499, we find fire. And on page 500 is everything else that happened after fire. And that's where we're at, right? Like we are currently on one page out of 500. And just one page ago, we barely had fire.
You can invert that. So invert that analogy. That
right.
If
now
you
imagine
think
the next
about
500.
if you think about all of human history up until now, and you said we recorded it all on paper and we took up 10 pages.
Yeah.
And then you said, hey, in the next 10 weeks, we're going to add 15 pages to the book.
Yeah.
You know, like that's the part that like we just can't wrap our mind around. You can't wrap your mind around like every certain period of time. We're just like doubling the understanding we have of the world.
So I'll bring it back to like what I've been thinking a lot about lately, just as a CEO running a company in very uncertain times, is I continue to obsess over this like never waste a crisis thing. And kind of the way I'm looking at this and thinking about it is like, in order to survive in this environment, like first you have to survive, then you can thrive. Okay. Step one, survive. Is my survival and my success is only in relation to the other players in the field. So like kind of the way I look at this is my job is to just be better than everybody else. Right. And it's just to react more calmly and more precisely than everybody else. Right. Because like the way I look at it, I don't know if you guys is, I mean, I meet a lot of operators, like a lot, young ones, old ones, everything. And most of the time I'm unimpressed. And I don't even think I'm that good. Like I really don't. I just think there's like a lot of crap. And then there's like a very small number of people who are super current, thinking about things the right way. Right. Like, and I'll tell you, like when I get on this with you guys and we talk, it's like you guys are very current. I go and talk to some other friends of mine, man, they aren't even using AI yet. And like, I know people that run $100, $200 million companies that could not tell you how to find ChatGPT on the internet. Like they probably wouldn't even guess that it's like chatgpt.com. Like that's what we're kind of all up against. So like D2C operators, the thing I've always admired about a lot of them is like, they're smart, man. They are scrappy. They win on a game of inches. And I think that's like my message to people in this space is like, I think you're actually pretty well equipped to handle all of the volatility right now, right? It might suck in the short term, but it's going to suck more for everybody else.
Yeah, man. blue collar internet work. That's what we're doing.
We're tradespeople. Is that what you're saying? I love it. I'm good to be a tradesman. Sure.
Hardest working, covered in shit, swinging hammers, trying to get this thing to work.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to guess my last revelation. I've been working on Ridge for 8 years. I'm 31 now. Okay. I've been working on it for 8 years. The entire time I've been rushing through it. I'm like, I cannot wait to sell this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right around the corner, there's $100 million for me right around the corner. And I just, thinking of, post-COVID, everything, losing contact with your friends. I'm like, oh, I've been rushing through my life. This is the greatest time I've ever had. And I'm just blinders on going towards this mythical end. And that's why I'm like, oh, I'm never going to sell Ridge. Like, I'm actually going to rethink about how I run this thing and just try to build the funnest, most enjoyable time ever and really sit in every single day and be so lucky for it. Because I've just been rushing to the fucking end. So that is the other thing I've learned being off the internet. And now we can have our wonderful guests come on.
I am so here for this version of Sean, by the way. Like, I'm not even joking.
This is infinite game, Sean. This
Sean,
is such a
honestly, I'll just encourage you, man. Like, it is so fun to watch your development as a person. You're so gifted on the business side, but it is really fun to watch you as a person develop. And, we've known each other for several years, but just really, proud of the growth that I see from the outside. And I like a lot of stuff you're saying. Like, I love to hear it. So,
you know what Mike is actually saying, Sean? What Mike is actually saying is he thinks you're getting old.
Right.
Welcome to the old man club.
You've earned your way into the fraternity.
He's a proud dad.
He's a proud dad. That's what that is.
Okay, I have another announcement. Sean, I'm your father.
No, dude, you got started young, Mike. 14, throwing kids out. Well, you made it to the end. You are now a true friend of the operators. Some other friends of the operators: Northbeam, Fulfill, Postscript, Saras, Richpanel. 5 softwares, 5 sponsors, 5 softwares I actually use and pay for, and I was using and pay for before they started paying us for the podcast. Thank you for sponsoring the podcast, all 5 of you guys. Thank you for making it to the end. Thanks for being here. Talk to you later.